All right. Well, happy Friday, everyone, and welcome back for another set of Learning Tech Talks where we are exploring the landscape of learning technology while cutting through the fluff and getting your questions answered. And today's going to be a fun one. We're talking about video and the ever present kind of concept of bringing YouTube to your company, and we'll dig into that one because that's a phrase I think needs to go the way of the dinosaurs, but we'll dig into that. And so I am joined by Shridhar Shukla and Sunil Gaitonde, right? Am I close?
Yeah, you're pretty close.
Pretty close. I know.
You did well. You did well, Christian.
Well, at least I remembered to ask before we came live. I hate when I forget to ask and then somehow I just try and take a stab at it. I think I've only had one where I couldn't even get close to it. So anyway, so we're going to get live. We're going to be talking about this stuff. I'm looking forward to our discussion around this because it's really about how do you maximize the power of video. We talk a lot about using more video, but I really want to dig into this. How do you do that well and think bigger about how you do that in a way that's adding value versus just doing video for the sake of video? So we're going to have some fun with this. But before we get into the conversation, right, we've got to get our icebreakers out of the way, but in a positive way. I say that like it's negative, but these are so much fun. So let's start with where are you in the world today? And everybody watching, I'd encourage you to participate and play along as well. So let's start with, I'm going to go with Shridhar. Where are you today?
Oh, I'm in a city called Pune. Okay. And only people living here can pronounce that. It is spelled as Pune, but you pronounce it as Pune.
Okay, all right.
So it's about 80 miles southeast of Mumbai, which used to be Bombay in India.
All right.
It's you're decent sized city.
What time is it for you right now?
It's about 9:30 p.m.
Okay, not that. All right. That's
not that late.
Not too bad, but again, you're on a show. Wow, kudos to you on a Friday.
Friday evening, I'm hiding my glass of whiskey here.
There, you know what? If you take a sip, I won't mind because now we've covered the fact that it is 9:30, so that's totally fine. All right, Let's jump over to you, Sunil. Where are you?
By the way, one interesting fact about Pune, as he said, where he's from, the game of badminton was actually invented in Pune.
The game of badminton, home of badminton. See, we just learned something today. So if you're watching this video, you now have a new fun fact.
Yes.
All right, Sunil, where are you?
Yes, I'm based in Chicago.
Okay, yeah, that's right. You're just a little bit south of me, so you get to deal with all the snow and the cold that we're dealing with. Where Shridhar, it's quite a bit warmer. Although you said it was a balmy 60 degrees.
It's one of the coldest days here in the winter. About 55 degrees Fahrenheit, but it's one of the coldest.
Oh man. Well, let's not talk about that because I'll just get sad.
I don't want to make you feel bad.
All right, so let's go to our icebreaker question. And again, those of you watching, you can play along, but this one's going to be fun. I know my story's got some humor to it, but let's do this one. We're talking about video, so the icebreaker naturally makes sense to have something to do with video. So, what was the first video you ever produced? And we did have the clarification point backstage to know that it's the one that you remember. So it can't be one from when you were, too young to remember. So Sunil, let's start with you. Let's reverse the order. What was the first? Describe it. Tell me a little bit about it.
Yeah. So the first video I actually remember making, not including the ones where I was just testing if my camera actually works, was we actually at the company itself. So this was about, I would say, 2003, 2004 timeframe, maybe 2005, I guess. We actually created a video called The Company. So around that time, there was a movie called The Company that was released by Bollywood.
Okay.
And it was a pretty violent movie about how things work in a company. It's like a mob story. And we sort of mapped a bunch of characters from that movie into our company executives. So everybody was dressed in a real, fancy way and was delivering dialogues in a really poor form. The whole movie, what you could call, was an a complete disaster, but extremely humorous as everybody in the company was watching.
Okay, wow. So was this thing full length? Like, was this a full length production?
I would say it was about 30 minutes.
30 minutes. Okay.
Yeah.
So it wasn't quite, a 2-hour cinema, but it also wasn't a 5-minute clip. I like that.
Correct. Yeah.
Full video production crew, the whole thing, or did you just
No.
No.
It was just us. We were bad. I mean, we were bad at pretty much everything: acting, script, how we shot it.
You didn't win any Academy Awards or anything for that one, though.
No.
All right, Shridhar, how about you? What's your video production story?
Yeah, so I'm going to, what I remember is the one where I was all alone in a conference room with my laptop and a webcam, trying to record like a corporate message about what the company wants to do, etc., etc. And, I don't know how many takes I took. I'd come in early and I went on recording. I didn't like even one take. Finally, I got sick and tired and I said, take the last one and do what you want with it.
And like magic, it went perfect, right?
Later I realized that they all looked alike and I didn't have to not like any one of them. But during the creation process, I never liked even one.
Got it. Okay. All right. So mine is actually, I'm going to take you back to my high school days. We're going in the time machine back to high school, and it was for my high school Spanish class. Right. We had to do a project, and myself and a couple of my friends decided rather than write a report or something like that, we would do a video. We were going to do a video where we would do everything in Spanish. And it was honestly the dumbest video I think we ever made. We borrowed my friend's parents' camcorder, right? This thing that weighed like 50 pounds that you walked around. And it was the stupidest video we ever made. But what was fun, and my teacher, I later found out she would have given us an F on it because we did such basic stuff. But what we did in the video that actually ended up getting us an A on the project was we put all of our bloopers at the end of the video. Going back to your point, Shridhar, there were a ton of times where we're like, no, we didn't do it right, or we'd mess up, or we'd start laughing, or something would happen. Anyway, we put all those at the end for everybody to watch because we just thought it was funny. She goes, that's what got you the A, because I saw how much time and practice you actually put into the language. Because based on the original video, it was pretty short. We just used very basic Spanish. We didn't have big dialogues. And she goes, based on that, I wouldn't have thought you really put much effort into it. But when I saw the bloopers and the takes and everything that you did, I ended up giving you an A. So I tried to find it. It's in a box in my basement somewhere. I would have brought a clip, but unfortunately I don't have that. So anyway, all right, well, let's change gears. Let's change gears out of icebreakers and into the conversation around video for, I say, learning, developing talent, honestly, performance support, communications, change. I mean, there is a whole lot of uses for this stuff. But before we get into this, you're both the co-founders. So we got to hear the story. And you shared with me before we went live that this goes back. Well, I went in my time machine to high school. You go way back. So what's the story of how you two met, but then also how did that lead to kPoint?
So there is actually no direct link between what we did in high school and kPoint, but we have been friends since 8th grade, and close enough friends that before even email.
Wait, you told me that you planned kPoint when you met, right? I thought that was you're changing this on me.
Yes. we would like to rewrite history too. We have been friends since 8th grade. They call it standard in India, but since 8th grade. And we were close enough friends that when we actually went to different engineering schools, the Indian Institute of Technology in India. I was near the one near Calcutta called Kharagpur, and he was in Mumbai. But we, even during that time and later, even before email became prevalent, we used to communicate with each other writing letters. So we were that close friends.
Okay.
So we both came to the US around 83.
And I'll tell you, Christopher, Sunil is very organized. So he has kept all those letters. and he's waiting
He's
for the
so
right
bad,
moment to
Paul.
expose me.
There's
Yeah.
a filing cabinet under his desk right there.
Actually, funny thing, one of the first emails he sent me, I still have it. So this was around 1984 or 85 time frame. So as I said, we've been close friends, but after we both got our PhDs, but our careers went in different directions. And Shridhar will tell more about what he did. But I was in the US. I stayed in the US since then and worked for IBM. Then I had my own startup that Cisco bought in '95. So I continued with that. While I was at Cisco, Shridhar actually went back to India and was one of the early employees of a company that eventually went public. And we, again, stayed continuously in communication. In fact, a couple of his customers I had actually forwarded to him.
Okay.
So around 2003, 2004 timeframe, we decided that we wanted to do something different. And we started a company called GS Lab, or Great Software Laboratory. So Great Software Laboratory grew fairly rapidly. And we realized that we also had some people leaving over a period. And we realized that all of the expertise, new people, when they joined, they hardly had any expertise. People who had expertise were leaving. So we needed some way of communicating it. And we found that writing documents just wasn't cutting it. So we decided we'll record videos. And I don't know if you've seen webinar videos or any other kind of videos. They're boring as hell to watch.
What are you talking about?
So we said, well,
I have them in my Netflix playlist. I sit and binge watch webinar videos all the time. I have no idea what you're talking about. I live on these things.
Yes, they can cure insomnia. So we said there has to be a better way to watch. It's become so easy to create videos, but we need to figure out a way to find stuff inside videos.
Okay.
And so that's how the concept of kPoint came about. We said it is not enough that we can record videos and can put them in one place, but we need some way of searching through them. So that's how
now. Okay, so background though, just so I have a little, because I'm gonna dive into this one. But so you both were in the kind of entrepreneurial space, but technical. Are both your backgrounds technical? Then were you in the software? Okay.
Yeah. So I have a degree in computer engineering. A PhD in computer engineering, but I was pretty hardcore coder until I joined Cisco, which happened through an acquisition. So I became a manager. But even then, I was quite involved in it.
Same with you, Shridhar?
My degree is also in computer engineering, and my first job was with the U.S. Navy, believe it or not.
Okay.
I worked for the Naval Postgraduate School, which is a university on the beautiful central coast of California. So that was my first job for 6 years.
Okay.
And then I returned to India.
Okay.
Then became an entrepreneur.
Well, see, the thing about it is, and this is maybe just an envious thing, but like I would love to be that skilled to be able to go, you know what, I see this, I'm just going to make it. I'm just going to make a solution to this. Okay. So anyway, so you had this issue, you were leaving people. And again, I think organizations deal with this all the time. The tribal knowledge that people bring with them, their internal expertise, they go and it walks out the door with them and it's forever gone. And you just really don't know how. So you decided to create something different with it. Now, when was that? When did you actually launch? When did you actually launch that?
Okay. By the way, it's not only that. What happens is
go for it.
We were going because we were growing rapidly. What used to happen is we would have people sometimes in tens or hundreds joining on a Monday, or the next guy joins on a Wednesday, and so on. And the team leader who has to bring them on board had to keep repeating himself or herself.
Yep.
So videos were really a great medium, but we wanted to make them somewhat more engaging and interesting. So that's how it. So to answer your question specifically, the company was incubated inside GS Lab, which was the previous company we co-founded.
Okay.
And then around 2000,
go for it.
Yeah, 2011, we spun out kPoint as an independent company, and we have been running it since.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
All right. I want to share one more aspect of this. When we were doing business from India with American companies, when we founded GS Lab, and there is a 10.5 to 13.5 time zone difference. And so whenever we had business meetings, somebody was going to sleep or somebody was waking up. And you can imagine that, you can't really concentrate.
Yep.
And so there was this need to be able to view the webinar recording later, just to be able to go over the important stuff that got discussed and you were too sleepy to grasp.
Yeah.
Or you were dropping your kids, putting them to bed or what have you. So we said, this recording of web meetings was very important to create and make them searchable, as Sunil said.
Okay. Okay. Well, so you're hitting on two things. And I think from a use case standpoint, I mean, I look at this, I actually got into a conversation with someone about this the other day, the power of video with things like that. I mean, the reality is delivering content live is really one of the most challenging and I think inefficient ways to do it. Now, that doesn't mean you can't do it that way, but to do it only live, in my opinion, is a disservice because to your point, people either are distracted or they don't have time or they can't make that meeting. We're dealing with global organizations, all these different factors. I even got off a call with someone the other day where they just said, some people just talk too slow. I want to be able to run things at 1.5 speed so that I can listen to it and watch it while I'm doing something, but not necessarily have to be like, wow, this person talks, really slow. I need what they need, but I just can't sit around. So I think there's a lot of power behind this, whether it is capturing this knowledge, but actually solving the problem. So with that though, when you look at that, I've heard lots of people say we need to do more with this. We should capture more things. We need to have more videos. But the challenge is that's a little bit easier said than done. So obviously, as you were looking at creating a solution to do this, because there's video hosting platforms now. I mean, you can be like, oh yeah, we can just host videos anywhere. What were some of the things that as you got into that, you had to tackle? Because I can even say from my experience, even getting people to create a video is not always as easy as you'd like to think. We have equipment, but it's not always the equipment that's the issue. So what are some of those things that you've seen over the years as you've seen people move towards this to try and actually overcome some of those barriers?
Yeah, go for it, Sunil.
Yeah. So one of the things I would like to say is that we have never looked at videos as something you use for learning, even though it's one of the most popular use case for us. So we are about sharing information.
Okay.
And videos are probably the best medium to share information. So fundamentally, we come from that view. So what we found is that it takes quite a bit of effort in any company to share. I mean, for example, the big companies I worked for a long time ago, we used to write documents all the time to share information.
Yeah.
Nobody sat down and said, how do we inculcate a culture of writing documents? Because it was just there. Okay, so now what I do understand that there are people have sometimes unrealistic expectations of what their video should look like. So as long as there is a champion of the sharing culture inside an organization, they need to create some sort of a marketing program. For example, one of our customers has a whole bunch of videos everybody creates in the organization, or a large number of people create in the organization, but they've rebranded it as how to. So whatever you want to do and whatever you want to find, it's in the how to portal.
Okay.
How does the stuff get into how to portal? Because people create it. And what they have chosen is they've chosen agility over perfection.
Okay.
It is kind of made very clear to everybody, there is no way you're going to get a perfect video, and nobody expects it. In fact, the imperfections might even make it look cute. So go for it. See what happens. And bad content will eventually go down to the bottom anyways. So it doesn't really matter. So that's fundamentally where we come from.
Okay. Well, I think you hit on a couple things that are really important, which is one, I think sometimes we get caught up in this whole, it's a learning tool, but yes, but it's not just that. And I think thinking more broadly than just, we can use these for training videos. It's not only more impactful to the organization, but I think it also makes it easier to sell the case for this, because if you're just saying, hey, here's another video tool, that for learning, it's way too specific of a use case versus, hey, let's use this more broadly. But I think the thing that, I just laugh now. The part of the thing I was laughing about was thinking back to Shridhar's, his first video that he created, and how many people who have created a video, if you're watching, let me know. But I've been there, where when you first start producing video, you do it and you're like, no, that's just, hang on, I gotta do it again. That wasn't quite right, or I messed this up, or I didn't like this, or oh shoot, that my background's not. You're caught up on all these details instead of thinking about the fact that that's not why people are watching the video or engaging with the content. They're engaging with the content because they need something from it, or they're trying to figure something out or learn or find information that they need, versus, oh, I really don't like that. I really don't like that heating vent behind Christopher. That's super. No, nobody's paying attention to that. But I think sometimes we put ourselves on that level to create video content.
Yeah.
So, Christopher, there are a couple of points I have learned over the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Number one, people think video is camera, but not at all. Video is something on the screen and great audio.
Okay.
And people really forget that the quality of the audio is far more important than what's on the screen, because that's just the way we work. And so if people get that right, they produce great content. Now, one of the hurdles that we have seen is that there is just this fear of creating a video, because if you look at our schooling and college too, we are always writing something. Somebody's correcting. We are so well trained in writing text that we don't think twice about writing a few paras. But we never got put through that training to create a video or speak in a way that makes sense to people. So once people get over that, we are all trained to talk, but while creating the video, we don't believe we are talking. Once you get over that hump, then you start creating great content.
Okay. And it is interesting about that, because you do see a difference too. And I think one of the things where you'll see this come to life, what your point of how you're bringing this up is, you can tell when somebody's creating video content and they're creating it as though they're reading, right? Like they're just reading something versus talking, like you said, versus just communicating with someone and having that conversation. It's part of the reason I think interviews have been so popular in terms of podcasts and things like that, where people are hearing a dialogue between two people versus somebody reading a script, things like that. But the psychological effect it's a big one. So I kind of want to dive into that a little bit, because I am curious how you hit on it a little bit, Sunil, in terms of how some organizations have done this. But I can tell you, I had one initiative where we wanted to do this, and I came in late to the game, but there was this similar idea of like, let's create the knowledge sharing using video. And let's just say we vastly underestimated the psychological barriers and then the sustainability of it. And it went down like the Hindenburg would be a very kind way to put it. So, from a process standpoint, where do you see organizations starting with this? Because I think it's tempting to come in and go, we're going to do this and everybody's going to create video and it's going to be amazing and it's going to be awesome. And it normally doesn't go that way. So I'm curious, where do you see organizations start? Where do they usually start if they're looking to do more of this?
Okay. So there are various reasons why first of all, you need a critical mass for anything to be successful. Okay. So the question really remains as to how do you get to the critical mass? So the most effective way probably is the mandate. Okay. But people usually don't like it.
Make people do it.
Yeah. Make people do it. People usually don't like it. And in some cases, it doesn't make sense. So you have to figure out whether mandate makes sense for you or not.
I do want to, before you finish that though, I want to jump on this. When we talk about critical mass, just in case this isn't resonating or it doesn't click, we're talking about you have to create basically a baseline of content to get this off the ground. Because if you just say, hey, we did this thing and there's one video from Christopher, it's not going to be enough to really generate what you're looking for. Correct? Is that what you mean when you say you got to create that critical mass?
Yes. So even in an organization, they follow the internet rule, right? Only 10% create and the rest kind of watch or kibitz.
Yep.
So you have to somehow get to the 10%. So there is fresh content coming in all the time.
Okay.
And as Shridhar mentioned earlier, most people are not comfortable creating videos because that's not what they usually do. They look at it as if they're producing some sort of a film.
Okay.
They don't have that many misgivings when they're writing a document, but they do have saying the same stuff in a video. So mandate is the first, probably the most effective way to do it.
Okay.
As long as people kind of either submit to it or somehow accept it or feel that, yeah, it's sort of justified, we should do it.
Okay. And justified, I think that's an important one. There has to be a purpose behind it. You can't just say, we mandate everybody go create a video of something. There has to be some sort of, we're trying to drive towards this. We want to share your perspective on something so that, to your point, psychologically, people can connect and say, oh, okay, I can create a piece of content towards this thing.
Correct. The second is incentives. So this is actually an interesting story, not related to videos. When I was at Cisco, they had just maybe a month or 2 months before that switched to an automated performance evaluation system. Until that time, we used to download some form from their website and we would fill it, type it in, and then we'd do performance evaluation. So they switched to this system. Nobody wanted to, none of the managers, including me, we were not interested in using this online thing. It seemed like foreign, we had to learn something new, just didn't want to do it.
Okay.
Guess what?
Rather download it and fill out the old paper form and mail it in.
Yeah. So guess what they did? They said the first 100 people to sign up for this, we will give you a free t-shirt. Okay, now most people at Cisco are paid very well. These t-shirts probably cost $3. Okay, but a lot of people signed up. I was one of them. I was one of the first 100, so I got my t-shirt. But just for that, so you have to kind of come up with incentive programs that get people motivated so you could get to the critical mass. And then the third thing kicks in. The third thing that kicks in is most people like recognition. They like to be told, hey, the stuff you produced was great. It was useful. Maybe it was not all that great, but it was very useful. So once they start getting that kind of recognition, they start producing the content themselves.
Okay.
So eventually, you may have mandated 90% of your employees to do something. More than half of them, or even more than that, maybe 90% of those are going to drop off. Okay. But 10% critical mass you'll get to, and that I think works eventually.
Okay. Well, and so what's funny about this, and even the initiative I had that didn't go so well, the one thing that we did do well was we did have that critical mass, and we followed a similar process. And I think that's a valuable point for people who may be trying to do more around video. Is there is a change management tail, right? It's not the tail, it's the nose, right? It's the nose of this thing that you have to prepare for, to say, you can't just turn this thing on and go. There's kind of a leading up to it, because it takes time. You've got to be able to make that connection and drive that and say, let's figure that out.
Let me say one quick thing. It's not that we haven't failed in a number of organizations. We have. So this doesn't actually work every single time. But wherever it has worked, it has taken this kind of a pattern with a strong champion that drives this to a critical mass.
So it's not 100% guaranteed way of doing it, but you've seen consistency in when it does work. That's kind of the problem. There's this initial kind of mandate that's connected to a greater purpose. You're still going to get the drop off, which I think sometimes that's a hard lesson, or not hard lesson, but I think sometimes need to kind of adjust to the fact that not everybody's going to do it. And that's okay. You need to accept the fact, don't be trying to get 100% participation, because you won't. It's just not going to happen. But then also, so the incentivization helps drive that. And I'm guessing based on the organizational skills that Shridhar mentioned earlier, you probably still have that t-shirt in one of the drawers behind you.
So there was one more angle I wanted to point out, Christopher, is, we are about video at work, right? So whenever someone is at work, they are very conscious of their time and productivity. That's the natural behavior of a person. So nobody is going to do anything that is either A, not mandated, or B, not directly useful. Okay. So let's leave aside the mandate part. let's go more towards, where people are doing videos of their own accord, and people are consuming them because they find value in it. And so, like you were saying, you need a champion to map a certain work process to the benefit that they're looking for, and video just happened to be the vehicle for that.
Yeah.
So one example I want to tell you about, we recently applied for an award for one of our customers. This is Here Technologies with Toby Newman. And they made it to the finals at Learning Performance International.
Okay.
And the use case was like this. And it's the 10-year-old use case that I told you about. It was Bill Gates, I think, who said, we always overestimate what will happen in a couple of years, but seriously underestimate what will happen in 10 years.
Okay.
So that's kind of what has happened. The pandemic has brought in so much video. People don't have time to watch it. Moreover, critical stuff gets exchanged and they have to go to someone. So the process they applied was, stuck in all the web meeting recordings, keep them in a well-known place, make sure the content coming in is good quality, as in it's full of information. And very soon that particular web page where there were links of these videos became the go-to place for people to get the latest product information. Once that became known as a good watering hole, people started going there and putting stuff there.
What's funny about that, and I don't think this is just a video thing. I see this with a lot of initiatives where we don't always give it the time to take hold. Like you said, we vastly underestimate the time it takes for big changes like this to happen, and for even things to get out to people. I even think back when I first was about to start learning Tech Talks, people told me, they said it might be 2 years before you even get an audience, because it just takes time for people to realize what this is and where the value is, and even find out about it. Maybe they didn't know. So I think that is an important piece to highlight, that sometimes, especially with something like this, where you've got a fair amount of barriers. You've got people who may be nervous to create videos, so that dwindles the number. People are busy with other things, and you got to put it somewhere where people can find it, so that and then give it the time it takes to mature. So it sounds like, at least in that use case, once that took off, then that became the source where people went for content, correct? Especially, it sounds like, for product.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, because you want to get the latest information about your own product, and you need that one authoritative source. Once your videos and your video repository becomes that source, everyone is going to go there.
Okay. So I got to ask this, because this is one of the ones I have a perspective on this. I have a perspective on all the questions I ask, which is kind of the fun of this. But anyway,
which is good.
So this is one of the ones you'll see, especially in regulated environments, or even just in general. Let's talk product, right? And this is a risk, I think, no matter what, whether you write it down or whatever. And maybe I'm giving an answer to how I feel about this anyway. But sometimes you'll get the pushback, which is, well, but this video content, who's policing it? Who's making sure all the content in the video is 100% accurate? Who's actually then making sure that it's in compliance and that we're not, putting things out there that shouldn't be out there? So I will acknowledge that is a risk that you need to address, but I'm curious how you've worked with clients, or what you've seen when that. I hear it all the time. Oh, we couldn't ever do social learning. We couldn't ever do user-generated content. It's just too risky.
Yeah. So I'll tell you my view, and Sunil, feel free to chime in with yours, which could be different. Is whenever something new comes into an organization, there are people who want to manage it.
Okay.
And that's kind of the wrong thing to do, because nobody is at work to do the wrong thing. But there are some people who would create that fear, uncertainty, doubt, and say, I want to manage it. And you kind of stifle the speed at which it would get adopted. We've seen that all organizations who did not worry about that ended up using far better use of the video than those who really wanted to sit there and control stuff.
Okay.
This is about sharing at work. You don't want to control it. You want to let it flow. And if you try to do that, you're going to kill the essence of it. So we've seen that behavior, and those who had that took some more time to adopt, and others who didn't, just took off.
Okay.
So actually, it depends on what people are sharing, right? It's not like every day at work we're sharing something. All the video platform is doing is it's allowing you to share some things using a video. So if let's say you controlled it and stopped that kind of sharing, there is somebody who's writing stuff on the whiteboard that's probably inaccurate and is sharing it.
Yeah, well, what's funny about it is, and this is all right. So I kind of tipped my hand on this, but this one is a bit of a pain point or a frustration point for me, because to your point, there's always somebody who's trying to control it or trying to your point, incite fear around, well, things. And again, I don't want to completely downplay the fact that yes, there are risks that you have to assess, especially in certain industries, certain situations. So you need to approach it from a risk-based standpoint. That said, I feel like, to your point, and you brought this up, Sunil, is the fact that you're operating off a faulty assumption. You're operating off the fact that no content that's inaccurate is being produced anywhere, right? You're operating that's not happening today. To your point, whether it's a whiteboard, somebody's sending an email, somebody put together a PowerPoint presentation that got forwarded around to people that, well, that wasn't accurate. That didn't go through a compliance process where every single thing was validated and checked before. But that's happening. I think of the elephant path that you a lot of times see, where people will take the path of least resistance. So if you say, hey, this video platform where we're creating video content for knowledge sharing and doing this, we're creating this, but we added 37 steps to compliance the heck out of this thing so that you can't, there's no accidental mistakes. People are just going to go around it. They're going to say, well, then we won't use that. Then we're just going to use this other channel and still transmit the same information because we need to communicate with people.
Yes, absolutely. So there is often, there is some information that needs to be controlled, yes, and it needs to be distributed in a way that makes sure that it is accurate. And so I think people need to use their judgment to do so. There are also organizations that believe they at least need some modicum of control. So anytime somebody publishes something through a video, there is a concept of a reviewer. So you make sure that it is reviewed by somebody. But remember, most of the content where we appear is internal content. So internal content, somebody can just simply send an email to somebody with all sorts of inaccurate stuff, or PowerPoint, as we talked about earlier. So this is not really adding any additional complexity to that situation. It is just making it probably easy to convey good information. It is doing nothing to exacerbate your bad information.
Right.
So I think that's the way it needs to be communicated.
It's well, and again, there are definitely, and I think this is where you take a risk-based approach when you look at this, because are there certain, I think of an example, healthcare, let's say pharmaceuticals. During my time in pharma, commercial professionals and regulatory or the clinical development professionals, they aren't supposed to be talking, because you don't want a commercial person talking about something that's still in product development, right? That's a risk. Okay, yes, in those instances, you can control, and I'm guessing kPoint has this built in, the ability to control saying, hey, these audiences cannot share content across the board. So that you have that protection to say, yes, we need to take the security protocols into place so we don't get ourselves in libel trouble. That said, we also need to recognize that creating a bottleneck where every single video that comes through needs to be watched and reviewed by someone is not the right approach. That's swinging the pendulum the other way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
So, Christopher, you mentioned one of those. The appropriate access control to content is very important, because at the end of the day, organizations have a risk in making sure if the content were to leave the perimeter of the org, so that risk has to be addressed.
Yeah.
And access control of the content, approval step that Sunil mentioned. And the third point is a very strong audit trail. And in case of videos, to not be able to ever download the video. That is technology.
Yeah.
You just don't let the video become downloadable. Barring somebody's screen scraping, even there, there are techniques that come in where you watermark it and you detect something. So as long as these 3 or 4 things are done, the workflow does not have to be hampered with approvals and check marks so that sharing goes on freely.
Yeah. Well, and it goes back to, I think you mentioned it before. People come to work, for the most part, most people, the vast majority of people come to work to do the best that they can do, to do, positive things, to drive the organization forward, to be successful at their job, things like that. People aren't coming in to try and I think sometimes we do this not just with video, but with other things. We make decisions based off the exception. Well, what if this one person who had a bad day at work goes haywire and records a bunch of stuff and puts it, okay, we're going to prevent innovation and prevent, knowledge sharing and prevent all these positives because of this 0.001% chance that someone over here might do something crazy. I think it's just a disservice to the organizations we serve.
Yeah. Go with not guilty by default as against guilty by default.
Okay. So let's talk about, the other piece I'm interested in this from a consumption standpoint. What does this look like, or how have you seen organizations set this up? Because, I think, to your point about what Toby did at here, which he's watching, by the way. So, hey, Toby, when we talk about that, I'm curious, because one of the other challenges that I think sometimes people deal with is figuring out where do they go for things, because there's a lot of different places that people are trying to remember. Oh, I've got to remember, I go to this site and this site, or this site and this site. Now, how are people balancing that as they're going into these video strategies? Are they approaching it more from they're integrating these into existing tools where people are, or are they kind of creating their own space where, like YouTube, you go to YouTube separately, or is it both?
It is both. So what happens, Christopher, is that people in a company need one well-known place to keep their video.
Okay.
So that they don't think, should I keep it in this system, that system, and over a period, the video content gets fragmented. So you give them one central repository for all video, but don't force them to go there. Okay. Let the video show up in their daily system. So keep integrations very strong, very easy, but keep the storage in one place so that you can manage the network, the content, the distribution centrally and easily. But you don't have to make people come to the repository all the time. Okay. That's the way it goes. And that's how all our large customers use it.
Okay. So and I think this is where we would differentiate between creators and consumers. So on the creator side, there's a central hub where you would say, look, if you're creating anything video related, host it here, put it here, manage it. Like, this is where it goes. So that going back to, and Sarika brought this up, right? From a quality control standpoint, we know video content is here, which allows us to manage and govern it through the central host. But the consumer doesn't necessarily need to know that that's where all this stuff is managed. That then can be consumed. You're integrating in with other platforms so that those videos are coming through where people need them.
Yes.
Yeah. But by the way, what is the most common way people find stuff? They just Google.
They Google it.
So yeah. So inside the organization also they Google. They do a search and the content will show up from anywhere. So as long as your content or your central repository of videos is integrated with your systems, that's the main way people are going to find it. So the people who are viewing videos or finding them, they don't need to know where they are. Creators, as you said earlier, they absolutely need to know where they go.
Okay. So, but does it, because this is one of the things where I think it's a balancing act, where sometimes, yes, you want to consume video where you are, but sometimes it is nice to know, hey, I mean, that's why I like YouTube. Because if I need to look something up, I know I can go to YouTube. Yes, I can Google it, but it is nice to know, hey, this is the video site. If I'm looking for a video on this, I can find it here. Because if you do a Google search, the challenge can be you might get a video from here and here and here, and one's embedded in a website that is a mess. And you're like, I don't want that. I just want to go to YouTube because I know it's a consistent experience and I know I can find videos there. Are they also creating kind of that portal or that hub of.
Yeah, this is happening all the time, Christopher. I mean, what we see from the data of all the customer domains is it doesn't matter in how many places they have integrated the video repository and how strongly they encourage people to go to those respective portals or systems. The direct view into the kPoint repository does not go down.
Really?
Because the creator creates a video, it ends up in the repository, he picks up the link and he emails it, or he puts it in your Slack group, and people click on it, they watch the video. So that's a direct view. Now you can work things like, give them credit for watching that in case that's a learning video in your LMS or LXP, that's possible.
Okay.
But people do like the convenience of getting a link and clicking on it and the thing playing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and you hit on something that I want to ask then here. So if this is, because again, we talked earlier on that not all video is learning video or training video.
Yes.
There's videos that are used for a lot of different purposes. But then, if it is a learning video, it can, when you're integrating this in, you can have it communicate back that, hey, this is actually, you're giving people credit, or you have a record for it, or things like that. You've built the connections between those so that it can,
Yes.
for purposes needed, give that credit.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a must. I mean, you need to have integrations on 2 points. Well, I would say 3. First of all, the video has to play in your learning system. And that must be pretty easy. So if the learning admin is looking for some content, the video from kPoint needs to show up there. That's pretty easy to manage. The second is the analytics that you produce in your learning analytics needs to actually show the analytics from the video repository.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be that I have clicked on the video, that means I get the credit. I need to actually look at what percentage of video was viewed, and that's there with the kPoint server.
Okay.
So that data needs to be brought in.
So there's deeper, you're pulling deeper analytics versus just,
Correct.
hey, yeah, they clicked on it. Well, that doesn't really tell me anything. Yeah, I want to know watch through rates and all this other stuff.
Yes. And the third part is, videos are no longer opaque objects today, especially with kPoint. It enables deep search to the spoken word, to the content on the slides.
Okay.
And, your chaptering. So when you search in your learning system for content, the integration has to be such that it searches deep inside the kPoint, deep search, and pulls that content out into your learning system.
Okay.
So those are the 3 levels of integrations, I would say.
Okay. So I want to talk about that one, because I think this is one of the ones that people don't a lot of times. This is where I've seen people write off video because they don't understand the capabilities and potential of deep search. And so they'll go, well, videos are fine, but the problem is you have these big videos and nobody's going to go through and find it. It's like, well, yes, if the technology you're using doesn't have any of that, you're right. You're right. If you have 9,000 hour-long videos, people probably aren't going to find it because the title's just not enough. But if it's doing deep search and analyzing what's being spoken, what's on the slide, all that stuff, and it's finding that data, so when somebody searches for that term, that can come up as a recommendation of, hey, this was here, and that's where it is in the video. That's powerful.
Yeah, and it's actually there in the system. In fact, kPoint's genesis was in making web meeting recordings searchable deeply.
Okay.
So that's how we began. That was 10 years back.
I have to imagine that was probably one of the pain points you wanted to make sure that you were addressing based on the story of why you ended up creating kPoint in the first place. Because if it was like, we need to create this knowledge management, but if this knowledge management's locked in this object that you have this black box of, well, we have a video, but I have no idea, what's in here.
Absolutely. The human psychology came into our mind that time. See, if you ask me to attend a webinar, I'll mark 1 hour away on my calendar. But I missed the webinar. The next day, I want to watch the recording. Am I going to spend an hour looking through the recording? No. I'll fall asleep watching it because it's already so dull at times. I want to go to the point of interest. So that's how we began.
Okay.
By saying that we will make the webinar recording deeply searchable.
Okay. Okay.
So taking a slightly broader view of it, even when I watch YouTube videos, there are 3 basic things that help me out. And this is not always true with YouTube, but we have some of these things in kPoint. One is that I want to know what's in this video. So in other words, I need to know the highlights of this video.
Okay.
Okay, YouTube doesn't give you this, but we do. But I would appreciate it if they did. The second thing to me is being able to search within the video. And so let's say I know this video is about some regulation, and I only want to know how it impacts Illinois. So I want to just jump to the places where Illinois is mentioned, so I can just focus on that. And I think that is something I would like to do. Again, this is not possible with, say, YouTube videos. The third feature they do have, and I love that one, is the speed.
Yes.
There is no video that I ever listen to at normal speed. I always start with twice the speed. If there's a fast talker like you, Christopher, or me, I'll kind of slow down a bit. But generally, I would go with fast speed. So like you said, even if it didn't have search, it didn't have highlights, a 1 hour webinar video, I'm going to watch in 30 minutes, maybe 20 minutes.
Yep.
And then slow down.
Well, what's funny about this, and I think this is something that as creators, especially in learning and development, we have to get comfortable with and be willing to overcome is, sometimes when you create your content, you develop this personal attachment to it, right? It almost becomes this personal attachment. And that's dangerous because when you do, that's when you go, well, I made this video. People have to watch the whole thing. And really, no, you need to let go of that and say, no, what I care most about as a creator is that people get value out of the content I created. And if that's 30 seconds at minute 42, so be it. Great. That's fine. I didn't create this to force everybody through. And I think we're getting to that point of, this is where we talk about personalization at a new level, where we're saying it's not about forcing everybody through the same experience, whether that's the speed of the video, whether it's the length of time in the video, whether it's where they consume the video at a portal or in Slack or Teams or whatever. It's about saying, what do you need? And what is the best way to get you what you need? Not force you through what I've designed because I'm the architect of this.
Yeah, so the easiest way for me to map this is map it to documents. When you hand over a document to somebody, are you making sure he's reading every word? I don't think so. So you might as well not expect that from your video.
But people like to think that.
Yeah.
I just think of resumes. If you've ever hired people, you'll see sometimes you get these resumes that are 37 pages long, and so be it. That this person thinks it's super valuable information, but nobody's reading 30 pages of that because they're just scanning and finding what is the relevant information based on what I need. And I think that's where I think there's opportunity for people to understand more about the possibilities of what video can do today, because I think a lot of people are still operating on a legacy mindset of what video is, which is it has to be super professional. It has to be done perfect. It's this black box object that you don't have visibility into or anything like that. And so, yeah, if you're still operating under that, you might look at video and go, I'm not really seeing why it's such a big thing. But if you're talking about it in the sense that we are, that's transformational.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
So one last one that I'm curious of, and this will be an interesting one. I'm curious if you have any insights or data on this, but we talked a little bit about this before we went live, which is I have seen over the years so many non-data validated things about videos must be this. They must be this length. They must be this quality. I think you brought up a really interesting point, Shridhar, about the importance of audio quality. I think that's one that, there might be some data proving that one. But I'm curious if you've seen over the years any sort of, recommendations or non-recommendations around, hey, when you think about video, this is how you should think about it.
Yeah. First of all, it's important to recognize, Christopher, that video comes in many different forms and shapes because, their objectives are different. The stature of the creator is different. The end use is different. The point at which the video gets consumed is different. So I'll give you an example. If say it's a product help video, you have a product and you've created certain content to help people along in using it. Now, when is a person likely to watch that video? Only when he needs to get that problem solved, right? So in such a video, if you kind of go on rambling and give the sales pitch of the product before you actually say how the problem is to be solved, then you've not done the right things. So better get to the point, be brief, be precise, and get them out to do their work.
Yep.
So those videos need to be small. Then there are also videos which are like, intense knowledge sharing videos. And even there, people are likely to come in and watch either the whole length in certain cases, but also on a precise, referral objective in a certain portion of the video.
Okay.
So one has to have a nice combination of a length that the content deserves, and yet the convenience of getting exactly what I want out of it.
Okay. Okay.
So there should be no restriction on the length of the video, because if something has to be 20 minutes long, it better be 20 minutes long. But when I come to watch it, right, you can't force me to watch 20 minutes, which is why the chaptering and, in a way, pseudo micro-learning imposed on a longer video comes in very handy.
Turning a long form video into capabilities that allows it to be used in short form.
And we've seen that happen, by the way.
Okay. Okay. Well, and it's funny because I think that is the case where it goes back to allow people to let the outcome drive what you're trying to do. So to your point, what are you trying to accomplish with this thing? Think about your consumer and think about how would they be using this video. But then the beauty of technology is, because the reality is you're never going to get it 100% right. You're going to have somebody who's like, well, I would really want to watch, a long video or something like that. And now because of the technology, you can actually turn that into short form. I mean, I even think back to when I first started this show. I remember people saying, oh, you can't make it an hour because it can only be 20 minutes. And I remember going, I can't talk through a learning concept in 20 minutes. You just can't go into any level of depth to demystify it. You can't do it in 20 minutes. And so, but the data has proven it because I have all the analytics on it. People watch it through. Now, granted, are they all watching it in one sitting? Probably not. But it's about the fact of thinking about how are you trying to do this and what's the best way possible.
Actually, your example is a good segue to say that there's a large percentage of content that we get are videos that are not created from scratch, which can be small. But a lot of the content we get is a byproduct of some other activity, such as this one. We are right now talking for about an hour. So this video is sort of a byproduct of your live stream. And these videos need these other features, such as being able to chapter them, jump through, look for information that they want instead of listening to it like a novel from the beginning to the end.
Yeah. Well, maybe you guys can help me out with that part, because like you said, we talked about YouTube, and unfortunately, YouTube does not have a lot of that functionality. So, and I will say, for a lot of learning leaders out there, and this may be a valuable of course, I say this at the end, which is probably where people watch it the least, but is the fact that when you think about this stuff, that's an important factor to consider. And I think a lot of organizations struggle with that right now. That they have 10 different tools that they're taking the video, they're running it through a transcription, then they're having somebody go through and try and pick out the highlights, and then they're that's a lot of work. And so it sounds like from what you're saying, technology is actually eliminating a lot of that inefficiency.
Yep.
Yes. And there is one more angle that comes in, Christopher. I'll mention it very quickly. It's far harder to create a short video than to create a video of the length it needs to be naturally for you as a creator.
It's true. And I think that's one of the things where sometimes it can be helpful to create long form video. And then if you need to chunk it, if you need to chop it up or take highlights of it or things like that from along the way, that's fine. Yeah. I do think that does do a disservice sometimes when people create these arbitrary rules of, well, we can't create a video longer than this. If it takes that long to talk through a concept, it takes that long to talk through a concept. Let the outcome determine the length, not the other way around.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we've had a good watch through rate. So apparently we've been talking about something interesting because people have found value in it. So this has been an awesome way to end my first week in the new transition here, and I'm looking forward to the weekend. But I really appreciate you making the time to join me, and this has been fun, just chewing through some of these challenges with video. Shridhar, I especially appreciate you staying up and hanging out. You didn't even take your whiskey, so
yeah, I just decided to keep it. I'll enjoy it after this is over.
All right. Well, this has been great. Thank you for the time. Thanks everybody who's been watching. Hopefully you got something valuable out of it, and we will see you next week. Have a wonderful weekend.